Hello, and welcome back to Stones That Speak. In today's video, I wanted to follow up on some stuff that I said a couple weeks ago in the video about Aquinas. If you watched the video about Aquinas and the Eucharist, you will recall that I dropped some shade on Aquinas' understanding of Aristotle's notion of substance. And I wanted to expand maybe on what I think of the notion of substance and a better way to approach this idea of substance. And really what I want to get at here is a question of reality, of what makes something real. Because in the atomist revolution, the idea was that the real things, the real actualness in the universe is found in these particles, in these things that everything is made of, these tiny, tiny little dots that are the building blocks of the universe. And this is the real stuff. This is the fabric of reality can be found in these building blocks, whatever they are, right? And the original atomists wouldn't have necessarily had the same understanding that we have of what an atom is, but they had decent grasp of this basic concept that still carries through to this day. And Aquinas is a little bit in opposition to that, but he doesn't have the benefit of actually having the atomist idea in front of him. So Aquinas isn't in conversation with what you might call materialism, not in the sense of like, I like to buy things and that gives me meaning, although that's also a problem, but in the sense of the material is what is real. He doesn't have that to push against like his successors have. And so his idea of substance is a little bit materially, but not exactly. He doesn't really flesh it out. He kind of goes off of Aristotle's thought that within everything is this thing that makes it that thing. And he applies this to the Eucharist in a way that let's say it's ambiguous for the sake of not rehashing everything we talked about in the Aquinas video. But the question I want to talk about now is, what does it mean for something to be real? What is substance, as I'm going to say I understand it from a neo-Aristotelian point of view? What is it that makes things be things? And before we get into anything else, I guess I'd like to start with the idea of light and the idea of color. In the opening to his book called Saving the Appearances, Owen Barfield does a great, just mind-bending question about a person who looks at a rainbow. And he in his question there, he says, okay, you can look up into the sky and you can see the rainbow. Where is the rainbow? Now, the sort of easy, obvious, like gut level answer is, it's up there. It's in the sky. I can see it. There it is. But of course, from a materialist perspective, we understand that we are seeing refracted light, refracted, right? Lights that's coming through these droplets of water that are in the sky. And these droplets of water are splitting the light prismatically into multiple different shades. And the place where that is happening is, at least theoretically, all through this cloud of water that the light is hitting, or at least through a significant portion of it. And the light is coming from somewhere far, far away in the sun, but we don't see it as a rainbow until it enters our eyes. We can't perceive the rainbow as the totality of all the light that is diffused. We can only perceive, and I hesitate to call it an object, but I don't know what else to call it. We can only perceive the thing that we see as a rainbow as an interaction between our eyes and the light that is traveling through the cloud or through the water mist or the vapor. Those two things have to pair up together and be in conversation and communion. The rainbow doesn't exist without someone to see it. But it also doesn't exist without photons to bounce through the rainbow and be diffused, and it doesn't exist without the water particles being there to diffuse the photons. And the tricky thing is like figuring out, what does it mean for this thing to be real? We would look at the rainbow and say that really exists, not in a physical sense, but like, I can look at the rainbow, you can look at the rainbow, anybody whose eyes are working properly can look up into the heavens from a certain vantage point and see, aha, there is a rainbow. We can agree on the colors that it has, and we can agree on its general position. We can move around and we can still see it being in basically the same position. And my general argument to you is that really the entire world is in some way like that rainbow, in that the rainbow is embodied through the fact that it has particles that work within it, but the particles themselves are not the rainbow. Now, on the other hand, neither is your eye or your mind the rainbow. The rainbow isn't there because you imagined it. It's not there because you're in the Matrix and like there's just a projection into like straight into your brain of rainbowness that you're having an experience of somehow, and it's nothing else but just experience. There is, I would argue, some real stuff out there that is working together to make the rainbow a reality. But the rainbow isn't just the stuff. And to think about it more detailed, let's think about how colors work. I downloaded this little picture here of light going into the eye. You've got your oh, wrong hand, sorry. You've got all your light out here. It comes in, right? And what it hits the eye, it gets focused, it comes down into the retina. It's hard to do this in mirrored, so but from the material perspective, let's say colors. What are they made out of? Well, photons is the obvious material answer, or maybe if you want to be a little more sophisticated, you'll say, well, let's give light its due and also point out that there's an electromagnetic wave. It could be a wave, it could be a particle, it's kind of both. Let's not delve into quantum field theory right now, but you know, there's like this process of electromagnetic waves or photons or however we're going to discuss them, and they propagate through the universe and they eventually find our eyes, and that's a color. Okay. But that's not what makes colors be colors. Right? And that's not even what makes light be light. There is an instinct that you may have to say, well, we have light, and really all electromagnetic propagation through the world is light. I'm sure said that at some point in time. And yet, let us say you go into a room and your son or your significant other or somebody who lives in your family, right, has gone into this room and they've put new light bulbs in the room. And you go to turn the lights on and everything is still not easily visible to you. There is no illumination. And you go to this person that has put in these light bulbs and they say, these are light bulbs that emit infrared light. It's still light. I don't understand. What's your problem? There's electromagnetic waves. They're bouncing all through this room. Way more of them than before you turn the light on. What's your problem? Why are you coming to me and complaining about this light bulb? The reason you're coming to complain about the light bulb is, of course, because even though ultraviolet light is, under certain circumstances and understandings, a form of the same stuff that hits our eyes and gives us illumination, it does not, in fact, create illumination for us to our eyes. Because the light is not within the particles. Now, you could create a device for which ultraviolet light does create illumination, and we have those devices. We have little night vision ultraviolet goggles. They're not the best way to do night vision. That's not really the topic here, though, so let's not go off into that. But you can definitely you can have a relationship in which ultraviolet light is in fact illuminating, but it's not illuminating in a relationship with the eyes that you have. And so light, as understood as a thing that illuminates your eyes and allows you to be able to see, is not simply within the particle, nor is it simply within the eye. It is within the enmeshment of the way that the particle and your eye work together. If your eye was not what it was, light would not be light. And if the electromagnetic waves or the photons were not what they were, the light would not be light. It's actually necessary to have both things working in tandem together for you to have a experience of that light. And what I want to say is that ultimately everything that you can experience as real is a result of that kind of interaction, of that kind of graspability. And graspability is the right word for it. I want to play a video from John Vervaeke. He's really the one who put me onto this. Now, he's going to be, in this video, he's going to be using this notion as a metaphor for the way your brain sort of works with itself and works with psychological concepts. And so we're actually not going to watch an overly long clip because that's not really where I'm going with this today. But this is where I got this idea from, where I really had this seed planted of what is the nature of realness and it being about this graspability. So let's go ahead and play John and see what he has to say.
The cup is graspable to me. It's not a property of the cup per se because it's not graspable by a praying mantis. It's not a property just of my hand because, right, my hand alone can't grasp. An affordance is, right, setting up a relationship of coordination between the constraints in the thing and the constraints in my hand so that I can engage in an interaction. So
that's the idea stated from another perspective, right? And graspability is really one that you can easily grasp it with your mind, and that's obviously where we're going to go in a minute. But I wanted to pull this out as well. John has his cup. I have this axe. Now this axe head right here, I found this at my mother-in-law's house. It had an axe handle attached to it originally. But me and my little boy went out in the woods and swung it around for a little bit, and it had been out in the rain, so it rotted and broke pretty easily. And I could have gone out and made my own axe handle, or bought an axe handle, I'm sorry. But I'm weird. And I had like a 2x4. Actually, it wasn't a 2x4, it was a 2x2 laying around the house. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to make my own axe handle. And so I hacked away at this thing with the machete and with the saw and really got it down into the point where it's a handle. All right. Now, there was a couple of things that I had to do to make this axe handle work. The first thing was I had to make the wood and the head fit together. The head already had its shape, and so the wood had to be carved down to be able to fit into this hole. It wouldn't be an axe handle that worked with this axe head if the wood was not in the correct relationship to the axe head. The axe head and the wood have to be in a good relationship. And they're not in a perfect relationship because there's still a little looseness. I may have to go to the hardware store and pick up something that'll widen the wood out a little bit and maybe keep it from wanting to rock loose. And the other thing I had to do was, since it was a big old chunky block of wood, well, I had to take it and carve it down to be graspable with my hand. All right, just like John talked about, it would not be, it would kind of still be a handle if it wasn't easily graspable, right? If it was bigger around, you could sort of wrap your hands around it, but then, like, I needed to make it work for me, and I had to make it work for my hand, all right? I didn't make it work for my 3-year-old's hand. My 3-year-old, if he takes this axe, will have some difficulty using it that I do not have, because it is graspable to me more easily than it is graspable to him. And graspability is something that isn't just in our hands. We have this idea of being able to grasp concepts. And what I want to propose to you is that the substance of the world is ultimately best understood in this idea of graspability, right? Like, our eye is fitted to grasp a certain kind of light, and that light is really light because we can grasp it with our eyes. We can see it. It interacts with parts of our eyes in such a way that it manifests the world to us. It does not matter how many photons or electromagnetic waves you have if it doesn't interact well with your eyes and create light for you. Light as a phenomenon, right, as something that you can do something with, does not exist until it's in the proper relationship with your eye. Graspability does not exist until it's in the proper relationship with your hand. So let's think about let's keep using this, all right? So I have this axe here, right? I'm going to argue to you that this axe has the substance of an axe in the Aristotelian, possibly Thomistic sense of substance. There are no axe atoms in any of this. Not one. Not one single atom in here can be identified as being an axe atom. So the substance of the axe is not in the atoms. It can't be an axe without atoms, all right? It can't be something without material. But what makes it an axe is the fact that I can grasp it, and the fact that it's sharp, it's made out of metal, it's durable, and I can use it to chop stuff. I can interact with this as if it was an axe. If I take this and I swing it at a branch, and I swing it the other way at a branch, I will get a big old chip of the branch out, and all of a sudden I'll be chopping up this branch. That's what an axe is. That's the substance of an axe. The axe acts in relation to me as an axe, and then I am able to use it to act in relationship to a branch in a way that I am bringing forth the result that is necessary. There is axeness in this axe because of how it is usable. Now let us imagine a modern art installation, right? Somebody goes to a lumberjack town, right? And they're like a super high concept modern artist, and they say, you know what, axes are a big deal around here, and people are able to, make their living with axes. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a giant axe So they make a 30-foot tall axe. Now it's still made out of wood. All right, let's in our analogy, let's say still a wooden handle on this 30-foot tall axe. Still a metal head on this 30-foot tall axe. We'll even say they sharpen it, right? The tip of this 30-foot tall giant axe is sharpenable. It's sharp. It doesn't have the substance of an axe, though. Why not? Because you can't interact with it as an axe. You have to be able to pick the axe up and swing it at a tree and chop the tree down for the axe to be an axe. That's not in the atoms. Again, the atoms participate. They are part of the pattern, but the axeness of the axe is only as a property of how it relates to the rest of the world, how it relates to you. Now, again, this is a radical idea, but what I want to suggest is that everything is like this. Everything is real to you. And I would argue is real at all because it can be grasped. The stars are real because you can look up into the sky and grasp them with your eyes as being different from the blackness that was around them. For a long time, things like background radiation were not real because you could not grasp them. We grasped them eventually. We made an ability to grasp them with certain kinds of tools, but it is perfectly reasonable to say that to Aristotle, there was no background radiation in the universe, because there would be no way for him to grasp it. It's not real to him. And that property of reality goes all the way down into the very existence of being. You might think of a universe that's empty. You might say, Albert, this is crazy. I can imagine a world without people in it. But you actually can't. Because there's still you doing the imagining. You're still sitting there thinking about it, right? Like the world, this world without people where there's only matter and no living organisms whatsoever. Let's imagine that just nothing alive. You just imagine a universe with like one billiard ball. And you're like, well, I can't even tell if it's spinning or not, right? You do the famous thought experiment. But guess what? There's still a person there because it's you that's imagining it. You can't imagine a universe that you can't imagine. This is my thesis. This is what I am saying that reality is, what substance is. And to bring it all the way back to Thomas Aquinas, and to get really super dangerous, the idea of communion being the body and blood of Christ is arguably found in the fact that you can interact with it as if it was the body and blood of Christ. It doesn't have anything to do with the atoms changing, all right? This didn't change into an axe handle primarily because of a difference in atoms. I took some atoms off to make it graspable, all right? It wouldn't. So in a sense, like if the communion wasn't edible, if somebody baked the bread too hard and you're like, well, it wouldn't work, right? It would not work as a way to interact with the body of Christ. But it's not a change within the atoms that makes it be communion, any more than it's a change in the atoms that makes this be an axe handle. It's an axe handle because I can grasp it and use it as an axe handle. And I would argue that for a stronger understanding of Aquinas is to say that communion is that thing that is graspable as the body of God that you can internalize, that you can make a part of your body, and so that you can become part of his body. Those are things that you can, in the sense of reality that I have just laid out here, really do. Now, the interesting thing is that when you bring God into the equation, all of a sudden you're dealing with something that is beyond graspability. It's like a mountain almost. I have a different idea for a video about rock climbing and mountains that I want to do eventually in the future, but to summarize that idea, you can't ever climb the whole mountain. So there are things that are only graspable in part, that are real, right? But you can only get little pieces of them at a time because they're too big for you. You don't ever climb the whole mountain. You climb the pieces of the mountain that you can hold on to. And so in the same way, you don't ever grasp the whole of God or look at all of the tree to bring it down into sort of the meat space where we can really get it. There's always more of the tree to see and another angle to see it from, and you can chop the branches up and look inside of them. There's all of these things that you can do to grasp differently and to grasp more fully. But without grasping, there is nothing. Things that you cannot begin to grasp cannot possibly have any reality for you. The Kantian idea of the thing in itself is a dodge here, and you might be thinking about that as like, well, yes, but there's some piece of this that's real that I can't see. But how are you imagining that? Again, you're imagining this universe without people, but you're still there imagining it. The thing in itself, if you want to use that idea at all, has to be beyond imagining, and then it's not a thing. It stops being a thing. Okay. I'm sure I've said something that's stupid in this, and if so, I apologize to y'all. I do hope that if you have ideas that run counter to this, if you think that I have really gone off the rails some here, that you would let me know in the comments below. I appreciate your time and attention. And I also want to say, if you have not watched like all of the Meaning Crisis videos, they're worth a watch. John Vervaeke has some very interesting ideas, and I don't agree with him fully about many things, but he will almost certainly challenge your thinking in ways that it had not been challenged before. And so from him I will also steal. Thank you for your time and attention, and have a great day.